Hi, I'm Wegener and welcome back to the Early Bird Photo News. I wanted to start today's show with a little bit of a warning. If you've gotten yourself a few of these SanDisk Extreme Pro SD cards over the last few years and you're using an R5 Mark II, you may be in trouble because some of these cards are currently incompatible with the R5 Mark II and may lead to corrupted images. And Canon itself actually published a warning on its website. Still images taken with the Canon EOS R5 Mark II may be recorded as abnormal due to the incompatibility of certain SanDisk Extreme Pro SDX UHS 264, 128 and 256 V60 SD cards. Canon published this a little while ago, and by now SanDisk has also responded to this, and at the moment there doesn't really seem to be a solution, but at least on the American website it says if you have one of the affected products, you can contact SanDisk and they will replace it with a card that's actually working. So if you have one of the affected cards, it probably makes sense to contact SanDisk and get a replacement because no one likes actually losing pictures in the field. When I started out with my photography, I basically only used SanDisk cards for many years, but in the last few years I've switched over to using mainly ProGrad and Wise Advanced cards, and they've given me fantastic results without any issues in the field. Since we're talking about the R5 Mark II, I wanted to touch on another subject with that camera, and that is the implementation of the pre-capture. Me and many others have voiced the frustration that one of the most obvious use cases for the pre-capture doesn't seem to work too well on the R5 Mark II, and that is a bird taking off from the perch. The issue is that in theory you should be able to focus on the bird, and when it takes off you press the shutter button and then the camera tracks the bird nicely and all your frames will be in focus and you get fantastic takeoff shots. Now sometimes that works, but many times the camera actually seems to stick on the perch rather than going with the subject when it suddenly takes off. And I've played around with the different autofocusing modes, and the best mode I've found to date is to set it to auto and then the responsiveness to +1. In most situations that has given me the best results, not only for birds taking off but also for perch birds or birds in the grass for instance. But even with that setting, sometimes it still happens that a camera gets stuck on the perch and I didn't know why. But then I actually found an interesting bit in the Canon manual. Subjects may be out of focus if there are sudden changes in the distance between subjects and the camera while you're pressing the shutter button halfway. So it seems like Canon's actually saying that the autofocus and pre-capture mode works, but it is more limited to not using pre-capture. So it seems like the shots we're getting nice and in focus are shots where the bird takes off kind of parallel and in the focal plane with the camera. But if the bird suddenly takes off right towards us, for instance, the camera seems to have trouble actually staying on the bird if you're using pre-capture. And this is exactly my experience I had with it in the field as well. Unfortunately, it seems like the ideal sort of use case of the pre-capture where you just continuously focus on the bird until it takes off and then press the shutter button to get the images may not actually be the best way to get sharp takeoff shots with the R5 Mark II. What are your thoughts on this whole story? Is this something that you experience with the pre-capture as well? As you can see behind me, I also edited a few more images this week, and this photo in particular is one that I really like. And I was taking it with the R5 Mark II, the 600mm lens and the 2x extender. And this combo of 1200mm gave me some amazing details and colors. In my last video about sharpness, I said that the closer you are to your subject, the more details and sharpness you can actually capture in your images, and this would be a fantastic example of that. Sometimes using the 2x extender on the 600mm lens doesn't work too well, but in this situation, because I was quite close to the bird, probably about 8 meters away from it, I was able to capture a nice head portrait with stunning details and sharpness. The other image I edited was one that I took at the end of a very frustrating day. I didn't really get any photos, so I was walking back with my heavy camera on my shoulder towards my room, and suddenly a few red-collared lorikeets landed in this frangipani tree right in front of me. It was already getting somewhat late in the day, so I had to use higher ISO, but I actually got away with one image that I really liked, with two birds on the beautiful flowering plant. And this image would be a great example where cleaning up the fine contrast and also removing a color cast from the image, like I showed you in my last sharpness video as well, can dramatically enhance the overall look of the photo. And in this case, I just used the curve and levels adjustment to clean up the contrast, and then used the selective color layer and the color balance layer to clean up the colors. And that gave me a result that I really liked. Now, you might not be wanting to take it this far with your own images, but at the same time, I think it's very important that you learn about editing and having a good workflow so you can do whatever you want if you need to your own images. And if you want to learn all about image editing and turn your own RAW files into stunning masterpieces, I would highly recommend that you check out my Lightroom and Next Generation Photoshop masterclasses that are linked for you down there in the description. In these classes, I teach you step by step and in easy to follow chapters all the necessary tools and techniques in Photoshop and Lightroom that will allow you to not only get great results, but also develop your own workflow that is easy to follow and can be applied to all your RAW files, no matter how hard they are to edit. But in these classes, you won't just be watching. I'm also providing you with my RAW files so you can edit right alongside me. And if you're not sure if my classes are worth it or the right fit for you, check out some of these amazing reviews on YouTube comments I get every single week from very happy customers who I have helped to transform the editing journey. So if you want to turn editing from a frustrating chore where you feel overwhelmed and not really sure what to do to your photos to a rewarding experience that gives you fantastic results, make sure to check out my Lightroom and Next Generation Photoshop masterclasses down there in the description. I think 2025 is definitely the year where we will see a lot of exciting camera bodies. The R6 Mark III, the R7 Mark II, and also I'm expecting Nikon to release the Z9II. Now, we don't know exactly what this camera will be like, but the blueprint is definitely there if we look at the R5 Mark II and the Sony A1 Mark II. Both of these cameras kept their resolution, they added pre-capture, they increased the frame rate, or in Sony's case the frame rate stayed the same, and then they added better screens, better overall processing, better autofocus, and a better EVF. So if we go by that, the Nikon Z9II would likely have the same or similar sensor with a better chip that also allows for slightly better processing and maybe better high ISO performance. It would likely have 30 frames per second. Because Nikon is using a Sony sensor, I don't think the frames per second would actually top the Sony A1 Mark II, so that's why I think 30 frames per second. Then I'm hopeful and almost certain that we would get full RAW pre-capture. And beyond that, we would probably get an improved design overall, better LCD screen, better EVF, especially because the resolution on the Z9 is actually quite low. So I would expect a viewfinder in the range of the Sony A1 II or the fantastic viewfinder that we can find in the Canon R1. And from there, I would expect better overall video features and some improvements to the autofocus, for instance, but nothing truly groundbreaking. So that would be kind of the boring option. The update similar to what Canon has done to the R5 Mark II and Sony has done to the A1 II. However, there could also be an exciting option because Nikon recently, I think 1 or 2 years ago, bought Red cameras, and Red cameras had a lot of global shutters. So there could be the potential that Nikon might actually introduce a global shutter camera. However, I think if it was going to be a global shutter camera, it might actually have less megapixels. So potentially that could actually be a completely new camera rather than the Z9II. And the Z9II might stick with a sensor that is very fast and stacked like the current Z9 has. So definitely exciting times ahead. And I would love to hear from you guys. What do you think a Z9II might be like? Is it going to be an update like the R5 II or the Sony A1 Mark II? Or is it going to be something groundbreaking? I definitely hope it's something groundbreaking, and I can't wait to get my hands on it when it's actually going to be released. The other question I have is, why is Nikon seemingly so reluctant, and the same is kind of true for Sony, to release a higher end APS-C camera? Canon has kind of done it with the R7, but we're very hopeful that this year Canon will actually release the R7 Mark II, a higher end APS-C camera, with Nikon and Sony seemingly have not really address this market. Sony has the A6000 series at least. We do have the Z52, which seems like a great camera, but it lacks crucial features like IBIS. And one of Nikon's most successful cameras in the past was actually the D500. So I would love to actually see like a Z500, a high-end APS-C camera that is very capable, offers us great specs and a fantastic overall performance, and also that added crop factor, which would go perfectly with Nikon's line of already nice and lightweight telephoto lenses. Definitely a camera that I think many of us would be very interested in. Am I right? Speaking about Nikon, there's another camera I'm definitely waiting for a bigger firmware update to, and that is the Z6 III. The Z50 Mark II has been out for a few months now, and we still haven't received an update for the Z6 III that actually adds the bird eye tracking to that camera. Now I know the camera has the animal tracking and that can identify birds, but Nikon's specific bird tracking actually makes the autofocus that much more responsive and better at tracking and finding birds. I do hope this is something that will change in the future, but the longer it takes to actually address this, the more likely I think it's actually that it's not going to happen. I know many of you guys use the Z6 III. Do you like how the autofocus works? I got a real cool product this week that I wanted to show you, and no, I haven't really gone into the party supplies business, but these are called Grumblers, and they're from my friends at Z9II that also make these great camera bags and backpacks and accessory bags that I use all the time, and you can find a discount code for them down in the description. And their newest products are these awesome Grumblers. Now, you probably don't know what a grumbler is, and neither did I, but you will all have been in a situation that you have a camera bag and you want to customize it, or you have a lens that have a bit of a funny size, and with the dividers that you've been given with your camera bag, it's just impossible to create the layout that you want to. And this is where these comes in. These strips come in this long size, and then you can measure out whatever size you actually need in your backpack, and then cut this strip to this right size. And then you also have these Velcros on the back here that then allow you to perfectly stabilize it and put it into your camera bag. So you cut the Velcro, you cut this strip, and then this will allow you to basically create any layout or design within your camera bag. And this doesn't only work at Z9II camera bags, but basically in any camera bag that's out there. So I think this is a genius solution to a problem that I've faced many times, because I definitely like to carry odd things with me, and when I just want to make like a small compartment or very large one, that was always a struggle with the dividers that come with most backpacks, and this will definitely fix that. The other day we were talking about how Adobe was changing their subscriptions, and I was talking to a friend of mine and he said, well, my subscription is already going ahead until 2029 and I always get it at a great discount. I'm like, how is that possible? And then he told me that a lot of different camera stores or like technology websites on the internet often sell year-long Adobe subscriptions at a big discount. And you can actually buy these subscriptions at the discount and then just enter the code into your Adobe Creative Cloud, and that will extend by a year your Photoshop subscription at the discounted rate. So this is definitely something I'll be looking into in the future, to buy up some of these on a Black Friday sale, for instance, buy 2 or 3 of these, and that actually allows me to stack them on my plan then. And so I'll be able to get the Adobe subscription like the Photoshop and Lightroom plan at a much more discounted price, which should be great. Any of you guys doing that already? I didn't really know that was possible, but it's definitely something I'll be looking into in the future. And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this week's Early Bird Photo News. Let me know all your thoughts in the comments. Give me that thumbs up, check out my channel membership and my masterclasses, and I'll see you guys in another video very soon. Bye, and don't forget to subscribe. See ya.